Sometimes you just get an anti-aircraft missile system and then you aim it at a passenger flight. Big oopsie there, but happens. All right. The weapons Ukraine uses against Russia.
It's been well over
from the Caspian Report. Let's hear what he's
a month since the start of the war in Ukraine. Against all odds, Ukrainians have held firm. Admittedly, Russian forces have gained territory, but at tremendous cost. No less than 7 senior Russian generals have been killed in action, and up to 40,000 Russian troops have either been killed, wounded, taken prisoner, or are missing in action. Meanwhile, on a hardware level, Russia has lost at least 16 aircraft, 35 helicopters, 289 tanks, and more than 1,000 other vehicles have been destroyed, disabled.
I love the fucking dummy that said Russian accent. He's Azeri. Okay, he's from Azerbaijan. He's not Russian. Fucking weirdo.
Or captured. The number of losses is likely much higher, but these are visual confirmations that serve as an accurate baseline. Ukraine has sustained losses in its own right, but not nearly as much as Russia. Terrain, morale, and logistics make up Ukraine's strategy, but much of its success is also owed to the tactical weapons employed by Ukrainian units. They make all the difference on the ground and in the air. So, let's talk about the game-changing tactics and weapons Ukraine uses to create a near-perfect handshake between tactics and strategy. Forces have come a long way since 2014, when Russian troops took over Crimea without a fight. Ukraine took that defeat to heart and steadily overhauled its military command structure. Instead of the Soviet top-down hierarchy, junior officers were given new rules of engagement and encouragement.
I mean, there's a little bit more to it than that, you know? A fuckload of training, 8 years of fucking urban warfare, cycling troops in and out of the Donbass region, dripped out the fucking wazoo by American and, NATO weapons.
Encouraged to take autonomous decisions in the field. The new doctrine worked, and it's the reason why Donbass separatists never managed to push up to the entire provincial boundaries of Donetsk and Luhansk. By contrast, the Russian armed forces are characterized by a top-down hierarchy, still adhering to the Soviet way of decision-making. But Russia hasn't exactly stood still either. Its most significant military overhaul since the 1990s comes in combined arms warfare. The primary Russian fighting unit is
changing your military from command and control to mission command is revolutionary and radical in military science.
The Battalion Tactical Group. These are combined arms units designed to be quick and adaptable while hauling heavy firepower. Each Battalion Tactical Group has 10 tanks, 33 infantry vehicles, 18 self-propelled artillery pieces, 6 multiple rocket launchers, 12 mobile surface-to-air vehicles, and flexible formations of support units. The format of the Battalion Tactical Group allows it to switch from rapid assault to support operations to long-range attacks. The inherent weakness, however, is its lack of manpower. Each group has roughly 200 infantrymen, which is not nearly enough to protect the flanks of such a large group. But when facing NATO armies, that wouldn't be necessarily a problem, since both sides would engage one another in conventional ways. And that's how the Russian combined arms units were trained to fight, facing off similarly deployed NATO combined arms units. Russia has an estimated 170 of these battalion tactical groups, of which 100 have been deployed in Ukraine. The initial plan was to move the Russian units towards road junctions, separate the Ukrainian forces from the urban areas, and then force the cities into...
Do you think the world should have responded harsher to 2014 Crimea annexation? What? How? What do you mean? Do you think what's going on right now is good? What could they have done in 2014 when they literally... No, I do want to understand. Like, what do you think could have happened? Like a no-fly zone? Just nuclear holocaust? The things that America and the UK is avoiding actively currently? I mean, one of the harshest things that Ukraine did in Crimea was shut off Crimea's water. You know, that was pretty fucking harsh, I would say. Like, really unacceptably harsh. And there are people who still defend it to this day.
To submission. But in war, things rarely ever go to plan. In the opening phase of the conflict, Russian forces failed to secure the supply lines running into Kharkiv, Sumy, Chernihiv, Mariupol, Mykolaiv, and Kiev. The sheer size of the battalion tactical groups turned into chink in the armor.
Same shit we're doing now, we could have been doing then. Would Russia still be in a position to invade Ukraine now if we had? That's the question. Nothing about NFCs. Are you talking about like sanctions? Is that what you mean? Because I don't know how effective they would have been, especially considering that like the same exact infrastructural problems or logistical problems that are occurring in Europe would have occurred back then. What, you're going to give weapons to Ukraine more back then? Who's going to use them? The Ukrainian standing army at that time was nothing. Like it was, I mean, there was one, but they would have gotten fucking absolutely rolled over and destroyed. It takes time to give Ukrainians not only weapons, but then also literally give them weapons, but then also train them. Like it took 8 fucking years to like actually turn Ukraine into a reasonable standing army. They did it for 8 years, and now they're able to withstand the Russian offensive. So, you know, it took that long. That doesn't happen overnight.
The problem is that regardless of the number of Russian vehicles deployed in Ukraine, the convoys had to travel by road. But the width of the roads and the speed of the front vehicles restricted the mobility of the Russian battalion tactical groups. Ukrainian light infantry units exploited that vulnerability by taking up positions in the adjacent villages and setting up ambushes near the major roads to target the Russian convoys passing through. The key to these ambush sites was, and still is, the American-made Javelin anti-tank missile system. The FGM-148 Javelin is a sophisticated, portable weapon that is easy to use. 2 users can operate it, and it can hit targets up to 4 kilometers. Once the target is locked, the missile does the tracking autonomously. What makes the Javelin such an effective anti-armor weapon is its double warhead and flight trajectory. The missile is programmed to climb to a higher altitude and then dive on top of the target where the armor is thinnest. The Javelin's first warhead destroys the reactive bricks most Russian tanks are coated in, while the second warhead destroys the main armor. Nearly every hit by the Javelin is an instant kill. A light version anti-tank weapon is the NLAW, short for Next Generation Light Anti-Tank Weapons. Produced by Britain and Sweden, NLAW is a fire and forget weapon with an effective range of 800 meters. It's also much cheaper than the Javelin. While a single Javelin missile costs about $200,000, a single shot by an NLAW unit costs about $40,000. That may seem expensive, but these are weapons that can destroy multi-million-dollar vehicles. So, when properly used, anti-tank weapons can tilt the economics of warfare. In the days leading up to the Ukraine war, the United States and the United Kingdom sent multiple cargo planes full of Javelins and NLAWs to Ukraine. And since then, these weapons have formed the backbone of the Ukrainian light infantry. Meanwhile, from the air, Ukraine uses the TB2 drone as a long-range weapon. The Bayraktar TB2 is a Turkish-made medium-altitude, long-endurance unmanned combat aerial vehicle. It operates at an altitude of roughly 6 kilometers, placing it out of range of many air defense systems, and it can stay in the air for at least 24 hours. Plus, the drone has a sophisticated electronic warfare system that makes it difficult to track, and it carries 4 highly accurate micro-munitions that can take out military targets worth millions of dollars. Dubbed as the AK-47 of the 21st century, the Bayraktar TB2 can also...
This is precisely what I was talking about when I said that the nature of warfare has changed dramatically, and that's why I feel conflicted about like celebrating the Bayraktar. But also at the same time, the Bayraktar is quite literally, and I use that exact same example, seen as a tool, an emancipatory tool, a tool for liberation in the exact same way that the AK-47 was seen. Cheap, It's reliable. It's affordable. It's a way that countries can fucking fight. Your Turk nationalism is coming out. No, I mean, it's literally it's the Toyota Corolla of fucking drones. We have to reconsider our approach to warfare now, where we have to reconsider our approach to warfare. Like, AK-47s were really reliable tools, right? It was like the Toyota Hilux. Exactly. Hiluxes and AK-47s is how you were able to push back against nationalist or imperialist forces. Whereas now, an AK-47 is not enough. You know, war has changed. You need air superiority. And the only way to maintain air superiority is basically by getting a cheap and effective drone like this.
Also be equipped with rapid mapping pods, which can map thousands of square kilometers of terrain at ultra high resolution. The imagery intelligence can then be relayed to
So is the Javelin fire and forget launcher. Russian TV has showed launch javelins as spoils of war, as if they got something else than useless tubes, although with sophisticated vision enhancer kit for viewing enemies in bad conditions.
Artillery and rocket batteries to destroy enemy units from afar. The TB2 essentially gives the user eyes in the sky, and that form of combined arms turns the drone from a tactical device into a strategic one. Now, when Poland purchased 24 Bayraktar TB2 drones at a cost of $270 million, the package included after-sales services like simulators, spare parts, training, logistical support, SAR radars, mobile control stations, and laser-guided munitions. This means that a fully armed Bayraktar TB2 costs a little over $11 million, while an unarmed drone is estimated to cost roughly $5 million. The Bayraktar TB2 may not take first place regarding combat performance, but its low cost and high quality after-sales services makes it one of the premier combat drones in the world. Before the war, Ukraine had purchased over a dozen of Bayraktar TB2s from Turkey. It also signed an agreement to jointly manufacture dozens more on Ukrainian soil.
Yep.
Still later, in early March 2022, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry stated that it had procured an unspecified number of TB2 drones and that they were ready to enter combat. On the battlefield, Ukrainian forces have used Bayraktar TB2 drones to destroy high-value enemy assets. The low price of the drone makes high-risk, high-reward tactics more feasible, since the TB2 can be deployed with little consequence. The final game-changing weapon employed by Ukraine is the Stinger anti-aircraft missile. Developed by the United States, the FIM-92 Stinger is an air defense system on a budget.
Boys, I'm sure that, you know, when Ukraine needs liberating and democratizing, okay, you know, 20 years down the line, these weapons won't come back to bite the American forces in the ass when they're trying to maintain air superiority, okay? You know what I'm talking about? These guys, they got them weapons. Just saying. Ukrainian troops are already using IEDs, and if Russia gets bogged down in a prolonged occupation, I can only imagine the use of IEDs will expand and resulting in many civilian casualties. Yes. I just don't, like, I don't know how people don't think that this is not going to end up in other people's hands. You know what I mean? Like this shit. I mean, it has, and it will, but...
Man-portable, easy to use, and gives soldiers on the ground the ability to contest the airspace above. The Stinger fires an infrared homing surface-to-air missile that, once fired, tracks to its target autonomously. The missile can reach an altitude of 3.5 kilometers and a horizontal distance of 4 and 8 kilometers. Now, that's not...
I mean, this was very effective in purging the Russian occupation in Afghanistan. Very effective. Remember that.
Not much to go on, but when employed in large quantities and spread over a large area, it is enough to deny air superiority, at least partially. Thus far, Ukraine has received hundreds of Stinger missiles from a host of NATO member states. They've been effective against low-flying aircraft and attack helicopters. Russian aircraft are currently experiencing a shortage of precision-guided munitions and thus need to fly low sorties to deliver unguided rockets to their targets. But by doing so, the Russian aircraft come within Stinger range. As of this writing, Russia has lost 16 aircraft and 35 helicopters. Part of this is undoubtedly the work of Stinger missiles. By the way, these numbers come from the Oryx blog, which uses open source.
It's amazing you think America hasn't developed strategies to combat this in the 20 years they've been dropping them to freedom-wanting countries. Yeah, that's true. Or maybe it is a part of America's strategy to just do that and then be like, oops, I guess there's more destabilization, which only means what we can do is, I don't know, sell more weapons to the other good nations, you know, the European nations that are a part of NATO, therefore, you know, beefing up their security, which is exactly what they're saying currently, by the way. They're literally not even hiding it. They're like excited. They're salivating. Okay. The defense industry's dick is so fucking hard right now. To assume that we don't think that much ahead is silly as fuck because the American military runs a protection racket. And when there's not enough enemies at the gates, you gotta fucking make new ones.
Images to complete its listing. You'll find the link in the description box if you want to explore it on your own. Now, the problem of the Stinger, as is the case with the Javelin, is that when procured in large numbers, disarmament becomes difficult. Not all units will be accounted for when things eventually settle down in Ukraine.
Okay, buddy, our special forces are more than capable of crashing our own shitty Blackhawks. We don't need Stingers, that's true. Why are you sarcastic when talking about Europe being good nations? Because there's no good or bad nations, dummy. And Europe is far from a good nation or a bad nation. Christ, dude. Homie, like, comes in here, listens to me fucking shit on America, and then completely forgets, like, his own personal history of his own personal country. Except for Moldova, the only good nation.
Some Stingers will regrettably fall into the wrong hands. And these are weapons with far-reaching geopolitical consequences. Imagine...
Listen, bro, we know what anti-aircraft missile systems in the hands of, like, the wrong people have done. According to, at least the Russian government, people in LPR and DPR were able to purchase some anti-air weapon systems. And remember what happened when they fucking aimed it at the wrong thing. Passenger planes that get dropped. It does happen. Sometimes you just get an anti-aircraft missile system and then you fucking aim it at a passenger flight. Big oopsie there, but happens.
A Stinger being used to shoot down commercial aircraft during takeoff or landing. That is an ominous notion, but one that needs to be addressed. Taken together, it's clear that numbers aren't everything in armed conflicts. Ukraine is proof that smaller militaries are not necessarily doomed when facing a military powerhouse. Javelins, Stingers, and Bayraktars are game-changing weapons that equalize the playing field. They also cause geopolitical rifts whenever they're supplied to controversial places. For instance, when the Stinger was deployed to the Afghan Mujahideen to shoot down Soviet helicopters, it helped tip the balance of power. Now, decades later, that same weapon is once more denying aerial superiority to Russian forces. Javelins.
There was a period in which, you know, I guess, I mean, there's some other people that use it too against, or the same people that used it against, you know, other countries too, but...
Stingers and Bayraktars are the types of weapon each country needs to have in its inventory, especially smaller countries. From an economic lens, these are affordable weapons that more than make up for their cost by destroying multi-million-dollar assets. That return of investment is redefining the way nations think of warfare. After all, who would want to be the prey in a world full of hunters?
That was incredible. That was a good video by the CaspianReport, by the way, for those of you who were wondering who had made that video. Okay.